Welcome, everyone, to this second conversation that is focused on the current shifts that we're seeing in global development aid. In the last few years, we have seen countries like Sweden make a shift toward national interests and at the same time ending their development cooperation with many countries. Globally, we've also seen a reduction of development aid, along with the complete withdrawal of USAID. And in this conversation, we will be discussing the current global politics that surround development aid and the effect that this has on Africa in particular and the people in Africa. For that, we have Samuel Wangwe here with us, and he has extensive experience as an economist, a policy researcher, and a policy analyst. He's currently a research associate at ESRF and RIPOA, and he's also serving as a consultant at Daima Associates. He's also worked with international research networks such as the International Growth Center and the African Economic Research Consortium. He's also served as an economic advisor to the government of Tanzania. And we're very pleased to have you with us today. We also have Lennart
Thank you.
Wohlgemuth with us, he will be moderating this talk. Lennart is a board member of FUF. He's also an expert in the field of international development. He served as the director of the Nordic Africa Institute and as a visiting professor of African Studies at the University of Gothenburg. And as I mentioned, this is the second conversation we had on this topic, the first one being with Adebayo Olukoshi, and that conversation is also on FUF Play on the YouTube channel. It is not a part two in the sense that you need to watch that first one in order to understand this one. But I would still encourage everyone to listen to that one as well if they find our conversation here interesting. So to finish off my introduction, I would also like to remind everyone that FUF is an independent association, so we're more reliant on our members and our monthly donors for continuing to do the work that we do. So if you want to see us do more seminars like this one, for example, then I encourage you to support us in any way that you can. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Lennart.
Okay. Very welcome, Sam Wangwe, professor
Thank
from
you.
Tanzania. We have met for the last 50 years, I think,
Yes.
and we have collaborated in many cases. I'm very happy to see you again and to discuss
You.
this very serious developments that are taking place. I mean, first we will start looking around the world and see what happens. I mean, there are quite a few very serious developments that take place. The global order is shaking, and we even have a sort of international war situation where difficulties for trading and communication over the in the world in a way that we haven't seen since the Second World War. And what we are very interesting is to listen to a number of African scholars and representatives of sort of the international of the intellectual community, uh, how they see the developments affecting Africa in general and Tanzania, of course, in particular. We come back a little more on Tanzania later, but to start with looking at worldview and how you see from a Tanzanian viewpoint what is happening in the world and how it is affecting Tanzania and Africa.
Yes, what we see happening are issues here much beyond more global. We see the struggle, who is going to lead, the US, China, and others. Blocks are emerging, BRICS. So we see big blocks actually emerging and the competition for domination actually emerging. And what we see is the alignments which we never saw before. And these alignments show they come suddenly. You hear the US moving to block these countries in tariffs, others respond. So it's the big ones actually come with sudden moves, something we never saw earlier. Well, earlier you could see gradual unfolding, and you could see issues coming But this time around, these issues are coming very suddenly. You remember, like the withdrawal of aid to countries from the US came suddenly, while we are used to situations where developments have been gradual. Africa started by being very dependent on aid, but the aim was actually to help Africa stand on their own feet, graduate from aid over time. But these new developments of just cutting aid suddenly, like the US has done and others have done, and now Europe is moving towards concerns of Ukraine and rather than development aid, it's unprecedented. It's coming very suddenly, something we didn't expect before.
And how do you see? I mean, how does it affect Africa in general? Is Africa more affected than other places?
I think Africa is the most aid-dependent continent compared to others. But you remember our writings were that let us make aid as a transition to help countries build the capacity to be less aid dependent. We even talked about developing exit strategies. Way back in the year 2000s, 20 years ago, we were saying let's have exit strategies so as prepare to be less dependent on aid. Unfortunately, many countries in Africa did not take heed of these graduating from aid. But now that graduation is being forced on them suddenly, and I think it is in that sense, that suddenness, which is
No.
making them be in a difficult situation. But I still think uh, uh, I think it's that unpredictability which is the key issues here.
But perhaps we should, in the beginning, start to look a little above the question of aid. Because I mean, what
Mm.
is happening now is much more than cutting aid. It's actually changing attitude of relations between countries, and development when it comes to trade, for example, has been very complicated. Does that affect Africa also negatively presently, or how do you see it?
I see it affecting negatively, but on the other hand, I see it as putting pressure on Africa to build the capacity to own its own development and cope with the playing the game as it comes. It may not have developed the capacity to adjust fast, but still I think it's possible to develop to have the capacity not to rely so much on the kind of relationships which were being held over time. Anything can change anytime. So I think Africa has to be able to build solidarity within itself first, in order as a bloc to be able to confront the changes which are coming so fast.
And is that happening in practice?
In practice, it's not happening. I see a few countries already beginning to show um, those signs. Countries like Burkina Faso, countries like Namibia, countries like South Africa, you can see Mauritius, you can see now Ghana, Ethiopia. The more countries can move in that direction of looking inward and outward only in terms of doing business as the world is changing, the more we can have that in Africa, the more we can be able to manage and swim in the in the very turbulent ocean.
But when you are sitting in Tanzania and you are looking around what is happening in the world, and you started to describe that things are moving very drastically, changing very drastically. What the discourse internally in Tanzania, when in the university level or in government level, how are you discussing what is going on around the world at present?
Well, those days we used to have debates and discussions about how the world is changing, how imperialism is changing, and how we could cope with it. And the government also has also engaged in such debates like aid effectiveness, development effectiveness. Those were actually open discussions. We see much less of those discussions now. But there is some hope in that when we see the development of Vision 2050, where Tanzania would like to be in year 2050. We see more of trade than aid. We see more competitiveness than asking for aid or grants or something like that. So I think the cards are on the table, but the game is not as much played as it was in the 70s and 80s and even 90s. There's much less of open discussion right now, even in the universities. There are many universities now, but much less discussion trying to cope with what is really going on in the global economy.
Would you say that this is true for all Africa, or is it particular for Tanzania?
I think most of Africa, this is still it's the case, I would say.
So it's less of openness, a lot less of discussion on how to tackle evolving problems today than it
I
was.
have I have that feeling that there's less of that than before, even in terms of writings on where we are in terms of our positioning in the global economy. There is much less interest, less publications in that regard.
Is that because it's a question of freedom of expression, or is it another trend, or a general trend taking place?
I think in many of our countries, there is less of open discussion on those issues. You remember in the earlier times, those discussions were not only from the universities, but also policymakers were discussing those issues. Now there is much less of that.
So is Tanzania becoming a more autocratic country than before, or?
I would say challenges of governance, where you remember even developed countries were through aid, were trying to put conditionalities, especially from the 80s, on conditionalities, improving policy by using aid. But that is, in any case, you need more ownership of the development agenda and more ownership in terms of improving policy discussions. As you see in Southeast Asian countries, China, Malaysia, Singapore, India, Vietnam, you can see much more of articulating their own policies and positioning themselves more openly in the global world economy. In Tanzania, we have less discussions of that nature. We expected the African Union to be more effective in actually discussing those issues, but even the AU has been less loud about open discussion on such issues. Maybe partly because the the contribution of the developed countries in the budgets of African Union are quite conspicuous. So Africa, which developed Africa 2063, we expected by now to be more vigorous in the discussions of what we want in Africa. We see much less of that development.
And is this because internal developments, or is it a reaction to what is happening all around the world?
If it was a reaction to what's happening all over the world, I can see, as I said, Asian countries are much more explicit in defining what they want. And as the world becomes turbulent, the need to define how your country wants to position itself, a continent wants to define itself, becomes even more urgent. But I don't see that happening explicitly in Africa as a bloc.
And you see no relation. I mean, the international world order is cracking up in certain aspects. I mean, the trade rules are overruled. A lot of international, I mean, the UN system is really under pressure now.
It's very much under pressure, and
Does that affect what is happening in Africa? Is there
I think it should be
no
happening.
other? There is no sort of second opinion from outside, or
In Africa, we should be defining more clearly our own position when this turbulence takes place. I do not see that happening. I wish it could happen more.
but you said that some countries in Africa actually are there are some seeds for taking new initiative.
Yes, yes, there's some seeds. As I mentioned, Burkina Faso, I admire them for actually being very straight. But the others also, Mauritius also is very quiet, Botswana, South Africa, Namibia, Ethiopia, Ghana, Mali, Niger, Mali, Senegal. So more and more are coming out, but I would like to see more consolidated discussion and integration in the discussion as an African continent, more explicitly, especially in the African Union and in regional blocs. That should be coming out very clearly. I can see it coming out in countries, some selected countries, but not so much in blocs like East African Community, SADC, COMESA, West African ECOWAS. We'd like to see more of those blocks coming out clearly, but they are not coming up as as regional blocks, but more as selected countries.
Okay, Sam, let's leave the international sort of scene and look more on what is happening in Tanzania at present. What you have described, does that sort of also suit the situation in Tanzania?
I think it also includes the situation in Tanzania. Situation in Tanzania, you can see it in terms of the documents like Vision 2050, such concerns of of defining our own development agenda is actually there. What we need now to really start seriously doing is closing the gap between the haves and have-nots in terms of governance, engaging more effectively the grassroots in actual open discussions so that they have the power which they are supposed to have in terms of determining where to go, how to go there.
But looking, I mean, I've had, and many of us have had the opportunity now because of recent happenings with the relations between Tanzania and Sweden to look back and see what has happened during these more than 60 years of collaboration. I mean, and I was in Tanzania 60 years ago, so I know what it looked
Yes,
like at that time. I mean, it's an enormous
yeah.
development that has taken place over the years. I mean, Tanzania is something completely different from what it once was. If you look at also with a long-term perspective, I mean, and you see, if you look at the economic development first, I mean, can you summarize how you see the developments that has taken place over the years?
Developments are huge in terms of uh, uh, growth and in terms of industrialization which has taken place, in terms of agriculture which has taken place. You can see in terms of education, very big strides in terms of health, very big strides. What is should now be catching up is the position of ordinary people in influence what's going on, like communities, local government levels, uh, participation in the decision-making processes. In other words, gaps in governance. Those, I think, are the challenges which we see now likely to be issues as we go.
Yes, I mean, we come to the sort of the problems of today, but I mean, still, even looking at the short term, the investment
Mm.
that were done under Magnafuli's leadership has now sort of come into to developments. How do you see? I mean, there has been quite some impressive developments also when it comes to infrastructure development, for example, in the recent years. Isn't that true?
Very impressive development, very impressive developments, although a number of them are yet incomplete. Take the case of the railway. The railway has gone as far as Dodoma, but the real breakthrough is expected to come if it goes all the way to Kigoma, all the way to the neighboring countries. So it's still on its way. So it has taken resources, and service from the Sram to Dodoma is excellent, but the real breakthrough is service to connect Tanzania with the neighboring countries, which is still on its way. Power has increased a great deal, and now the supply is much more satisfactory than it was. So in terms of power, with this uh, this Nyerere Dam is making a great progress. But we'd like to see more of power based on, say, natural gas, power based on wind, on solar energy, so that we really diversify the power. Much has not taken place in terms of those, which gas, wind, and solar. So we hope this next time round, this will be the way to go. But a lot of progress has been made. And
Yeah.
connectivity, actually, in terms of roads in the country, it has improved a great deal compared to what it was.
But there are, of course, I mean, a lot have happened. But that has also costed a lot of money, so you have had to take loans and so the question is Tanzania back to have a big debt, or can you tackle the investments that has taken place so far?
That's the challenge remaining. Paying that's but that has to go hand in hand with actually boosting the capacity to collect the revenue, to raise the revenue in the country, and that's an area which requires now close attention.
Yeah, and then you have the question of, as you already mentioned, of that the investments has been quite capital intensive and not so much labor intensive, which means that a big proportion of the population has not sort of been engaged in the development. Is that true?
I think the spread of these projects to where people are it is still quite limited, and we need to these are like trunks. So we need now to see how to connect to the development of where the majority of the people are.
Yeah, and so I mean, what you see is the development, and what we see is a development that has
Mm.
taken place to a large extent over a long period of time, but at the same time, it hasn't engaged enough people, particularly far out in the low regions and yeah, so the poverty alleviation part of it still remains.
Yes, poverty alleviation still remains in terms of the sectors which are supposed to create employment, which are employment intensive, sectors like agriculture, sectors like bigger part of the informal sector, they carry many people, a large part of the population, and productivity in those sectors is still low, and we have not made enough investment actually to make a big difference in those sectors, especially the private sector to be able to invest broadly, the informal sector to be more openly formalized so that it can actually take benefit of increasing productivities and income generation. So the sectors which carry many people still require a lot of attention to make sure that they actually grow productivity and incomes.
Okay, to connect to what you said before, with that government is not responding to the challenges. Is this sort of a political problem internally uh, that the concentration on infrastructure and long-term big development, but not taken enough care of sort of the income distribution aspect
Mhm.
of development?
I think so. And that has been recognized in Vision 2025, 2050, when one of the major things which have been addressed is to address governance and to address a better say of the majority of the people. And it is underscored and what is called performing business unusual. We cannot continue with business as usual because business as usual will leave the majority aside from the mainstream. But a mainstream which brings the majority of the people into development, benefits to development, is an issue which has been recognized. Now, the each question is how to, whether we have the political will actually to realize doing business as usual, allowing majority of the people to have a better say in what is actually happening and to benefit from the developments which are being put in place.
Yeah, we have all followed very closely what is happening in Tanzania when it comes to the opponents, the young, or the, if you want to say, the Generation Z protesting, and
Gen Z,
the response by
yeah.
government, a very cruel response to it by the government. Is that sort of part of the discussion that is taking place in Tanzania today? Sort of a confrontal.
I wish the government could allow more discussion of that kind because the focus on October 29th, when these young people came out, has many sides to it. And one of those is what has been building up as the satisfactions of the way the cake, the national cake, is divided. The way these young people, you can see that unemployment increasing, the incomes, they see when they compare, what they are with what they see around. It is not a satisfactory situation. So going to the streets uh, uh, becomes an option when open discussion is not formalized. When the opportunity to discuss openly is limited. But we see if business is to be done unusual, it will mean open discussion and open opportunities for the majority of the people so that unemployment and low incomes will not be a major concern in the majority of the people. So there are many ways of interpreting what these Gen Zs actually did, but the bottom line is to create an environment which is more inclusive than it is now. And Vision 2050 actually is talking about inclusivity of the development process and development outcomes.
Do you see any developments in that direction taking place, or?
I do not see them started yet. They have not started yet, but the vision and the plans are starting in July. So maybe it is too early to predict, but that must be the way to go. If we don't go that way, these problems we saw in last year, October 29th, may not be it may not be the end of it.
Okay, let's turn to the relation between Tanzania and Sweden. 65 years of close collaboration is soon coming to an end. Not completely, because there will be some continuation, but basically the bilateral part of the collaboration will come to an end. How
Mm.
did you react, and others you know, on that decision?
I think Sweden did a lot in the last 60 years, 50, 60 years. And I remember the cautions were given well in advance that we'll be pulling out, at some point we'll be pulling out. So it was not designed to be permanent aid such. So it is something we should have been prepared for in advance. So I see that the way aid is given may change from bilateral to multilateral. But also I see a situation where we move towards strengthening trade, strengthening business and investments, dealing with the big picture where it's not aid in those terms as it used to be, but building institutions so that we can see sustainability being in place rather than aid in the conventional way.
Is there something in our relations that you that has functioned well and which you think you're going to really miss when Sweden will withdraw from bilateral aid to Tanzania?
Mm. I can see many positives in what was done in education, in health, in the water, quite important developments in there, and also in terms of research and technology, research like in universities, in the Commission for Science and Technology, uh, through what was called those days SAREC. So we can see those developments. But the way the developments have been made build a capacity of institutions which should be able to take off. I can see now that aid being used as a springboard towards other levels of collaboration with the stronger uh, capacities locally here and new opportunities emerging which are going to be important in ensuring sustainability. So it will not be at the same level as it was, because now the capacities in all areas where the, the Swedish aid actually went are at a different level, where from that level we should be able to collaborate. And that's
Okay,
why I said,
with this
yes.
positive note, thank you very much, Sam, for all your wisdom, and I hope that we will be able to keep contact even after the day when Swedish aid collaboration ends, and other collaboration will be perhaps coming up and be even stronger.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I believe so. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, for coming to talk with us and for sharing your
Okay.
insights. And also thank you, Lennart, for moderating this talk as well. I feel like your economic insights and insights into Tanzania in particular gave a very good view of how things look at a smaller scale as well. And I will again highlight for those who might have missed our first conversation to watch that one as well. I feel like there was also a good overlap between what was said here today and what was said in the conversation with Adebayo Olukoshi, which will hit even harder by hearing it twice. So again, thank you for coming to talk with us, and I hope you join us again in future.
Thank you.